Joy for me means that I get to feel sad, that I allow myself to feel fearful, that I feel anger, and I feel the full range of emotions. And when I allow myself to feel the full spectrum of life, which is what we've been given, this gift, that is where my joy rises. That is where our joy rises.
Hello, beautiful people. As you know, we have been going through all of the different categories in the beauty circle. If you don't have your beauty circle, I highly suggest you downloading it. There's a free link to it in my bio or in the show notes. Today's guest is Shari Alyse, and she is known as the Joy Magnet. She is an international best-selling author, motivational speaker, joy expert, and a self-love coach. Shari's deep commitment to others is motivated by her own journey through childhood sexual abuse and other childhood traumas. Shari has spent her life learning how to love herself completely and now helps you reawaken to the joy so that you can create a life and a you that you love. In 2013, Shari co-founded one of the first online holistic directories and communities. She has been featured on numerous media outlets including ABC, Fox, NBC, CBS Radio, Huffington Post, just to name a few. Shari has gone on to produce and host multiple online TV shows and radio shows. Most recently, the talk show Heart to Heart. Shari's book, Love Yourself Happy, quickly became a #1 release on Amazon's bestseller, and she has created a signature coaching program to help you discover, embrace, and love yourself you. Shari believes that in the radical acceptance of yourself, you can live a life that you truly love. Welcome to the show, Shari. Shari, did I miss anything?
No, you got it all. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a joy to be here with you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you on. As we know, we've been covering the beauty circle and all the categories, and I've been so honored to find people that really align with the message behind the categories, and you are the joy expert. And I want to ask you, I want to dive right in. What does joy mean to you?
So, well, because it's so big, joy is who we are. Joy to me is the full expression of our truth. So it is the freedom of who we are. It's the allowance of who we are. It's the radical acceptance of who we are, and it's the presence of this moment. So if you can imagine, joy has no expectations, it has no limitations, it has, no desired outcome. It's just you being. And when we allow ourselves to feel that and to be that, then we have truly ignited our joy.
Wow, Shari, that is really profound if you think about it. And I love that you mentioned presence. And I think a lot of times when I have thought of joy in the past, I just think it means you have to be insanely like laughing and smiling nonstop and like almost like a fake it till you make it, like fake joy until you feel joy.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned that.
Well, no, it's truth. So here's what I have come to find about joy wherever I've gone and whomever I've spoken to, is that joy and happiness are different. Happiness is conditional. Happiness depends on a situation, and it comes and it goes. Joy is what we're born with. And what often happens though is that people tell us who we should be, what we're expected to be, and this beautiful open expression of who we are begins to get dimmed because we start to believe that we are not this person, but we are this person over here. And so in a sense, we disconnect from ourselves and we disconnect from our truths and we forget this joy. And that's why I'm here to help people reawaken to their joy.
Oh my God, I love that. And I so resonate with that. I actually did a video about this exact thing, about how as we grow, we are the spirit. And as we grow, people are kind of shrinking that down and telling you, no, don't do that. And I actually had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine, and I think we were talking about like childhood traumas, and I said, I've never screamed, I've never yelled. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I cannot. Like, even if you like stab my foot or something, I cannot yell. And I said to her, I did some thinking, and I thought, oh, that's because when I was younger, my voice, my spirit, my joy was, no, don't be too happy. Stop, control yourself. No screaming here. And that has translated. So I love that we align in that. And so with that being said, I want to ask you what beauty means to you.
Beauty for me is just the acceptance of who we are in all different areas. I see people's inner beauty first. Like you could just feel it when it walks in the room. You could just, and beauty and joy are connected because when you gift yourself with feeling your joy and living through your joy and sharing your joy, your beauty just exudes. You just exude it. No matter what you look like physically, I think you become physically more beautiful the more joy that you allow yourself to experience.
Oh my God, that is so true, and that's why I always, when I people ask me how is beauty connected to joy, well, this is how, because there's like this glow, this presence, this energy that comes out, and I love that you also agree with that, and you know, I want to get into your story, Sherry, if that's okay. Can you tell us more about your backstory? How did you get here to being the joy expert? I want people to know how this can happen for them.
Sure. So of course, like any of us, it's a big story, right? There's like 1,001 details to our lives, and all of our stories are so important. Mine, I didn't always know about joy. People used to tell me that I was happy all the time. Everywhere I would go, people would share, they're like, how can you be so happy? Don't you have any challenges? Don't you have any problems? And uh, I didn't understand it either because when you look at yourself, I looked at myself, I was very overweight. I had gotten up to 270 pounds. I was in a whole lot of unhealthy relationships. I just didn't, when you think about happiness, you imagine somebody who, really takes care of themselves and love themselves. And I wasn't. And that stemmed from my early childhood. When I was 7 years old, I was sexually abused by a stranger. And I always say this, it was 1981, right? Oprah wasn't out yet talking about sexual abuse openly. Nobody was sharing about it. It wasn't something that was, I don't want to say mainstream, but nowadays, unfortunately and sadly, it's talked about often because it happens so often. Either it happens more or we just speak more openly about it. But at that time, nobody was. And there was something within me, and I'll never, still to this day, no matter how many people ask me, like, what made you tell somebody? I don't know what that was, but I just knew that I had to. And the man had threatened me. He said, if you tell your parents, I'm going to kill them. If you tell anybody, I'm going to hurt you. And so I had that sitting with me, but I still told. And I was so blessed, Elizabeth, to have people that believed me. But at first I told my sister, or I was trying to tell my sister on the drive home, and she was with her friends and everything. And she was like, later, later. I was like, I have to tell you something. And she was like, later. She was 9, I was 7. And when I got home, I followed her into the bathroom, and I guess my mom sensed that there was something wrong because she was eavesdropping on the outside of the bathroom door as I was telling my sister. And so, long story short, my mother called the police, and the next weekend we had to go to the beach to identify this man. And I ended up prosecuting him. And so if you imagine at 7 years old, being in a courtroom and being on a stand, and the man is sitting across from you, and they ask you, like, it was just so traumatizing, but it was something that I was unaware of the trauma. You just actually are living it, and you're in it, and you're just going through the motions of it. And I believe that it was from that day forward where I really just lost touch with myself, because as trauma goes, it's so painful that you don't want to sit in it, so you do everything to avoid it. And Yeah, and my parents were going through a bitter divorce. And so my mom was really unhappy all the time at home and, always blaming my father. And the only thing that I knew was that when I would walk in a room and I would do something silly or smile, like I watched her sadness lift. And so I learned the power of changing people's moods. So I think that's kind of maybe where the actress was born in me, because I spent many years pursuing that path. It was, not only was I able to help people feel better, but there was this external validation that I was seeking, people to applaud you and make you feel better about yourself.
Wow.
So,
What a story. How brave of you to be 7 years old. I didn't mean to interrupt your story, but
no,
I
I can
just
keep
want to give
talking,
that.
and so it's good that you interrupted.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do too, but I just want to acknowledge that 7-year-old girl and how brave she was, because even as women who we are older, we are still scared to speak up sometimes, and not just women, but also men, people. So I just want to take a second to just give that little girl a hug and acknowledge her bravery, because that is freaking hard.
Yeah.
We might have some tears in this podcast, but they're tears of joy. And so tell us more about this story before I cut you off and stop talking.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm glad that first, thank you for honoring her. That's the work that I do now. Actually, every day is I honor her, and with self hugs, which we could talk about later. But, um, you know, there were two things that I learned with sharing my truth and my voice, using my voice to tell on this man. First of all, my mother, in being her beautiful mother that she is, she wanted to teach her daughter lessons, right? She wanted me to make sure that I never get hurt again. And so she talked to me about, not being so naive and not to go off with strangers. But as a young girl, all I heard was that it was my fault, right? I made that choice. I went off with a stranger, even though I'm 7 and I should have had adults protecting me, right?
Right.
And then my father, being his protective self, just didn't even want to imagine or think about someone hurting his young daughter. So he didn't speak about it at all. It was just something that was never mentioned. And the way that I internalized that was shame, that he was ashamed of me. And so there was always just between the two of that, I learned that my voice, number one, can help heal people, telling my truth, because we found out that this guy did it to other girls. So I was told that I was, a savior. I was told that I was so brave and I was so courageous and all of these feelings that I actually didn't feel. But I learned that. So that was the part where I disconnected from myself and never truly allowed myself to feel my emotions. Because anytime any sadness or any of that would come up, I didn't allow it to come up because I was brave, I was strong, I was courageous. This is what strong women, girls do. And that's how I went through life, totally disconnected from myself. But as I said, there was this outer glow, this outer beam of something that everybody would say. Like I used to work in a restaurant, pursuing the whole acting thing. So you're like you're a waitress and all that. And I remember I was working with really wealthy people, the clientele, and they would always be like, what do you have to be so happy about, Shari? Like and I would be like, I don't know. And I could never fully explain what this was because like I said, all of my behaviors, all of the ways I took care of myself, none of them really would show a happy person. And so I'll skip to 2010 when after an earthquake in Haiti, I don't know if you remember, it was a
I
devastating
remember.
earthquake that they had. Yeah.
Yes.
And I went there to volunteer to help rebuild an orphanage and school and everything with this team of volunteers. And I went there with this idea of all the ways that I was going to help them, right? All the ways we were going to come in and take care of them.
Yeah.
And when I arrived there, it was everything that you'd imagine, devastation everywhere. And children with missing limbs. Of course, it was orphanage children with missing parents, just complete devastation. But the one thing that they had that I had never seen before were these smiles, was this palpable feeling in the air. And here they are amidst devastation, but they were holding like makeshift church under this big tree. And they were all laughing and singing. And it was all of this beauty and all of this thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is joy. this is what joy looks like, no matter what it is and what your circumstances have. Like, they knew something. And for the first time, I was like, maybe this is what people are talking about from me. That we all have this expression of ourselves that wants to come forth, that can't hide itself, but we often, like I said, try to dim it. And so that was the first time that I got in touch with joy. And then I just started researching it and trying to figure out, does everybody have it? Is it only some people? And what does it look like? And all of this. And I just started the work on it, and, came back again to the fact that joy is just our souls, like, so excited to be in our skin, to be able to feel, to be able to cry, to laugh, to all of it. Right? And just gifting ourselves with the freedom to be who we are.
That is beautiful, Shari. But, I know, 2020 was a year and is still 2021. We are experiencing as a collective, universally, not even just as a country, as a state, as a city, universally, we're experiencing similar things. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of grief, there's depression, there's it's like there was like a big pile of poop, because I'm not going to use the sugar honey iced tea word, and it was just sitting there for like years, decades, and someone came with a stick and started scrambling that thing around, and now it smells and all the flies are coming out. And I'm sorry if you're eating and listening to this, but this is what has been. So for those people who are listening and they're like, oh, it's so easy for you ladies to talk about joy and be in the presence. And this is why we both have stories to share, because no, we didn't come from just being happy all the time. This is something that we worked on. It's like when you go to the gym, you work out. It's a muscle that you grow, that you strengthen, that becomes part of you. So can you share with us, after all your research and all, we got a little bit of your backstory, when you were 7, like, this is very traumatic, especially during that time. Like, it was not easy at all. Like, that was a very hard time. It was very challenging, and you were so brave. And then you were just almost wearing this character of happiness to kind of cope with the emotions that were bestowed upon you as a little girl, and you're trying to navigate through them as best as you could have. And you fortunately fell under happiness. I feel like you were trying to do that as you describe it. So I know a lot of people like that. I myself was like that for a long time. So can you share with us your tools for joy? Like, tell us what you have done. How did you start building that muscle? How can people today start building that muscle? Because it is a tough time for so many people. Like, there's not one person who isn't going through something. I don't care who you are going through something, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, but it's happening.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you just said is what is so important. It is acknowledgement. It is self-awareness. Because that is what changed everything for me, was that I had to stop running from what was hurting me. And I also want to acknowledge that 2020 was hard for everybody, no matter where you are and how much joy you hold and everything. The only difference between, say, myself, who has all this wisdom and knowledge, and maybe someone who doesn't feel that they have it, is just the fact that I practice it every day. Like you said, you never hit this certain bar where you're like, there I am, here I am, and I'm never going to have a challenge again. And the tools for myself and for others is the most important thing is the acknowledgement. Like I said, the awareness, the sitting into asking. Every single day I ask myself, how are you feeling, Shari? From the moment that I wake up, hand on my heart to first pay gratitude, because gratitude is an igniter of joy. You can't actually feel gratitude and be sad at the same time. You just can't. It's like impossible to do the two of that.
Oh my gosh. I challenge everyone to try to do that right now.
Try to give gratitude and be sad. And be upset.
Yeah, you just can't. You're right. Wow. I never thought about that.
But the thing about gratitude, it became, I feel like, because after a while, I'm not going to lie, like when Oprah was talking about it in the gratitude journal, everybody talks about gratitude, it becomes this buzzword. And so I was turned off from it for a while until I realized, oh no, it really is a joy igniter. Like, it keeps you in the present. So from the moment that I wake up, it's the sense of gratitude for my heartbeat, for drawing breath. And when you can connect to that immediately without all the things, all the thoughts of like, what do I have to do? How do I have to show up today? What do I have to resolve? We so often from the night before we bring in, when we wake up, we bring in our issues from yesterday. Instead of seeking the good, we go seeking like what hurts, right? Like
Yeah.
first thing in the morning, like what are the challenges instead of where are the joys? So I would say acknowledge the way that you feel, because joy for anybody right now, no matter how hard 2020 is that we can't deny what it is that we're feeling, because the only way, and I'm sure you've heard this, but it's true, the only way to heal something is to feel it. You can't heal something that you're not feeling. And so you have to gift yourself with that, because it's not easy for any of us. Like I sit with those every day, like, or specifically when a challenge, how can I love you today is a daily thing for me. But when there's a challenge, it's like, all right, what have you come to show me, and how will I grow? How will I expand? We're never going to run away. We're never going to not have problems. Like that is a given, never. So it's how do you meet yourself in those moments during those challenges? And self-awareness, self-kindness, self-compassion, and self-hugs.
Yes, 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 and yes. And I love, love, love it all. And as you were saying, I did the same exercise, what are you here to show me? And guys, I have cried and I have fought. That allowing to feel, I think, is the hardest part of the journey. Because once you feel it, then it's downhill from there, I think, from my experience. And so the feeling, that surrender, and I am so stubborn. I don't know about you, Shari, but I am freaking stubborn. And I'm like, no, I'm fighting. Like, I don't want to feel this anger or whatever it is, jealousy, at the moment, right? And so I just want to say that has been, but it doesn't happen like in seconds, by the way, guys. I just want to clarify that, because I know that there are going to be people listening and think, oh, again, it's so easy. Yeah, it's just feel. No, I want people to know that this could even take weeks, depending on how you feel about the feeling that's coming up. And it is like a battle. Literally, it's like a battle of egos almost. Like you are fighting your ego. You're like, I'm not gonna feel it. I'm too strong for this. No way. And then like it's really like who wins here, who has the most stamina. And when you allow it, then you can see the rainbow.
It's always going to chase us, right? Like it because it wants to be healed. It wants to be loved. Your soul wants to reconnect back to yourself. Like it wants you to be there present. And no, it is not easy. And even when you think that you've healed something, there's another layer to it. Like I'm so many years into this healing journey, so many years. And just 2 days ago, I was experiencing heavy anxiety. Like it doesn't mean any of your issues go away just because I'm a joy expert and I'm a self-love coach. It doesn't mean that. But what I have now are the tools to be able to recognize things and not sit in them, and then know what to do next. And again, it's always the allowance. When we create a safe and inner world for ourselves, like we create this beautiful space, this landing pad, then we create space for stuff to begin to come up because it feels safe to do so.
Yes. We spoke about safety and surrender, and these are all the recipes to basically attract joy and be in the joy and the presence of joy. And I am so, as you were talking, and I'm very visual, like I play movies in my head, and I was thinking about like when you're in the car, if you're driving and there's like potholes everywhere, and you're like, I feel like that's life, and there are gonna be potholes, and it's like, this is like your steering wheel, like you're going to be able to move, and like all these tools are parts of your car. You have a rear view mirror, you have a side mirror, you have these little cameras here, and those are tools. That's how I like envision it. And like you're on the road, it's a journey, it's not a destination, right? There's going to be potholes, there are going to be accidents, and it's your tools in your car. How upgraded is your car, right? And that's what these tools are. They're gonna come, like you said. The anxiety might come in at a different layer, because I mean we're never done healing. I was like, I'm done, I'm healed, and I was like, oh no, the next person came.
You think you are?
Yeah. The next thing came up, and I'm like, oh, okay, fine. And it gets quicker, right? It took me months or years, and then it went to a month and 2 weeks, and then a week, and then days, and then hours, depending on it. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's the muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important that people know that they are tools and it's not just like something that you're born with or something that only special people have. It's like you said, a practice and a muscle that you do. And you spend more less time in those places. You recognize them quicker. I can start to feel like I used to not be in touch with my body. I can start to feel like when my body starts to constrict, I'm like, okay, I know what that signal is for me. I know how to handle that. And then, the ride becomes smoother the more and more you practice.
Yeah, I love that. In regards to the beauty circle, are there muscles there that you could strengthen that you would say, I think I need some help in these categories?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. That's another thing. None of us are perfect in any areas. Sleep. I need some more sleep. And it's not that I don't try. I think there are just aspects of myself that I'm still working through that, like my mind, that doesn't want to shut down. So there's deeper layers that I'm still working on healing. And I know because I've done everything for sleep. Like I listen to the meditations, I set up the proper environment, I do all that. And still, there's a part of my mind that, still can't fully shut down and stay in that restful place. And then I know that affects other areas, like it affects my skin. I mean, this is, the truth. And, I have hair loss and stuff, and I'm certain that the stress and all of that stuff, creates that as well. So those are definitely areas of improvement.
I think every single guest that comes on here is either struggling with hydration or sleep. I always yeah, or sleep. So you're not alone. And something that I would, since you are into asking, yourself, like, how am I feeling? I would invite you to ask sleep, why aren't you coming to me? Why can't I sleep? And if you're really silent, sometimes that might show up for you. So I feel like that could help. And let me know how that goes.
Okay, I will. I love that. What a great question. I didn't think about it because you were supposed to share it with me.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And I want to move forward in asking you a question that I love to ask all my guests as well. What is one thing that you would have told yourself before you started to heal yourself?
That there is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong way to heal or to do anything really. I think as someone who has experienced trauma, we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially like the perfection, and because it's an aspect of trying to keep yourself safe, and so always trying to show up perfectly and doing what I thought was right as opposed to listening to what was really trying to be shared with me. So there is no right or wrong, Shari. Just experience, just allow, just feel. You're okay.
Wow. That's amazing advice. And you're so, the older we get, we always go back and we live and we're like, oh, only if I knew, only if I did. And that regret and that's such good advice. I feel like so many people would hopefully be in the present and hear this and just take a risk. And there is no right and wrong. There is no recipe. There aren't like, follow these steps and you will be forever healed or you will be forever in joy.
When we mentioned happiness before and you said, like people think, oh, you have to be happy or it's this fake laughter, it's this smile all the time. Joy for me means that I get to feel sad, that I allow myself to feel fearful, that I feel anger, and I feel the full range of emotions. And when I allow myself to feel the full spectrum of life, which is what we've been given, this gift, that is where my joy rises. That is where our joy rises, is in the permission to feel it all with no right or wrong attached to that.
Did you ever watch that movie, the cartoon movie with the emotions? I forget what it's called. You have to watch it. It has like different characters. I have to find the name and I'll link it in the show notes. Okay. I think it is one of the most insightful cartoon movies I've seen for children ever. it talks about emotions, joy, sadness, anger, and how they all coexist. And when you said that, I was literally like watching this and I'm like, oh, that is so true because you can't. Yeah, like you can't. Like I want people to understand that you can't you can't see the sun without the night, right? Like there's no light without darkness. And I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but it is so true. Like if you've experienced pain, you don't know what pain relief feels like, right? If you've never experienced hunger, how can you feel that like satiated, like, oh, this is so filling? Or like, have you ever drank water when you're like really parched and you haven't had anything? You drink that water and it's like magical, like it goes down so slowly, you can feel it go through your, like, is it going through my lungs, what's happening? It's, so like you have to feel the other parts to like fully understand. And I think that they're gifts. I think all these things are gifts. I interpret them, and I would love to hear your perspective on this. Like, you and I and so many people have experienced such traumatic events in our lives, and we have made something of ourselves, and we are here to hold a light for other people who may be feeling the same thing or experiencing the same thing, and we're here to show them, no, you can, and this is how. And for me, I feel like without this, I wouldn't have been able to feel life the way that I do today. And I know it sounds silly and it's horrible, and I never wish this on anyone, but I'm thankful for it because I can feel on such a deep level that I really believe I would not have been able to feel without this. And the joy, when I experience the joy when I'm sitting in it, I can feel every cell in my body. And I'm just like, I know that because I've also experienced every other cell being hurt. So tell us about your experience.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm just going to agree with you here that every emotion, everything that I've experienced, every valley, everything are gifts. They've always been. I didn't always know it because it can feel like hell sometimes. Like, sorry, but I mean, I didn't have an acronym like you do for sugar, honey, iced tea, which I love, by the way. But yeah, you didn't know it until been able to walk through it and then look back, and that's what I think is the gift for so many of us that we don't realize. Like I always say when I'm speaking and my audience, I always ask if anybody has ever experienced something that they never thought that they would get through, right? Something that knocks you to your knees, that's heartbreaking, and then how many people are now on the other side of it. How many have grown through it? So when those challenges then come back and they arrive before at our doorstep, we can step back and go, okay, I've done this before. I know I'm going to grow from this, and it's going to be hard. But the more and more that we push against it, that's where the anxiety rises because something's trying to come up and we're like, nope, nope, not going to feel it. And we keep pushing down and this is pushing up, and that's where all of this. So seeing the gifts in every emotion that arises and every challenge that arises, there is no, I think it was Nelson Mandela that I think said, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm terrible at these, but he said something along the lines like, there is no losing. You either win or you learn.
That's so true. And I've always seen life like that, actually. I had a teacher in third grade. She's my favorite teacher thus far, Miss Kawazik, and she taught me a lot of these tools. And she taught all of us these kind of lessons that, I don't know if she was quoting Nelson Mandela or what she was doing in the classroom, but a lot of the core beliefs that I have about this is all from my third grade, my third grade teacher. Yeah, she gave me these tools without knowing, and I've always lived my life that way. And I think she just did it like to kind of, when she would hand out like student of the month and you wouldn't get it, and she would always like tell us this so we wouldn't feel so bad. And like that has helped, I'm sure, all the other kids in the classroom, but it's totally helped me. So I love that.
I had a second grade teacher named Mrs. Felkowski, which is very funny, and she had a big influence in my life, but in a different way. She said that I was a motor mouth, and and I was like scarred by that. But then I went on to become a speaker, so I was like, well, I guess it all worked out, right?
Yeah, so that's interesting. You can always be motivated by something. Either it could be
Yeah.
positive or negative, and you choose how you
Yeah.
want to be motivated by it. Do you want to let it sit in with you, and that will be put onto you, or you can say, "No, I'm going to show you opposite." So good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it is brag time, Sherry. This is the time for you to brag about the things that you're doing, the things that you offer. Tell us more about how people can reach you, just like brag about yourself.
Okay, well, so I'm really excited right now, actually. I just premiered in January a brand new talk show with myself and three other co-hosts called Heart to Heart. And it was born after 2020, like because of what happened in 2020 and how you said everything was just rising and coming up to surface. It showed me that so many of us were not having important conversations that we should be having. Uh, my activist voice came out. I became a huge Black Lives Matter supporter in 2020, and I spent a lot of time at the protests and everything, and really just diving into all the ways that I was not able to show up for other people because I was too busy in my own trauma. And so I started Heart to Heart so we can start actually having these uncomfortable conversations, these things, and I'm really excited about it because it's not based off of what we think that we should talk about. We ask the audience for topics. So they submit them and we choose them live during the show. And so we have these great conversations around that. So that's really exciting. That's going on right now. And then, as always, people can work with me. I offer one on one coaching, as well as I'm doing a group coaching right now called Life Empowerment Bootcamp. And so every single month on Zoom, we do one topic a month, which is a life pillar. We just did self compassion on Self Love Day. And next month is mindset. And, just right last year, I was supposed to be on a book tour, but it got canceled. So I'm hoping, when everything's better, to be able to take my book, Love Yourself Happy, back out on the road.
I love that. I'm so excited for your book tour and for all the things that you're doing. And how can people reach you?
So they can. I mean, I'm super present on social media, especially Facebook. Facebook, like I've built a really amazing community there. But in order to reach all that, you can just go straight to my website, which is sharialyse.com. And they can contact me directly there. I got my speaking page, my coaching page, my everything page. So it's a great resource.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your information. And I'm sure that someone today heard what they needed to hear. And I hope somebody reaches out and gets your book. And I want to talk a little bit before we end about your book. Can you tell us more about your book? I think I see it peeking behind you. Yes, I love it. If you're not watching this, you should. It's Love Yourself Happy. Yeah, and I love this.
Thank you. That really tells a really powerful. So it's Love Yourself Happy, a journey back to you, and it's really about the roundabouts, the detours, and the U-turns that we take in life. It's basically my life's journey of avoiding and looking for happiness and joy and everything else outside of me to ultimately come back and meet myself and reconnect back with myself. And I had a really mystical experience in Sedona, if anyone knows about Sedona, where I actually ran into my 7-year-old self. And we had a big conversation on top of a mountain, the Red Rocks there. And that set me back to really finding myself. So this shares that story and life lessons for everybody. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a powerful book, and people have told me it's helped them a lot. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, I saw it there. I'm like, I have to ask her. Like, I'm just getting this message. Like, you have to ask her about this book because people need to hear about it because I think it's very powerful. I have not read it yet, but I will. And yeah, so I love that you shared that with us. And I really hope, and I know that somebody will pick up your book and find some healing in there and knowing that they're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing. Just knowing that you're not alone has been the most profound and healing thing. And the fact that you were able to meet the 7-year-old girl through this all and greet her and meet her and share with her like what her life is and what it's become because of her bravery, is just so beautiful. And I'm not gonna get too woo-woo on here, but I love this kind of stuff. And like, I don't talk about it enough because people see me as this beauty person, and like, I'm here to talk about beauty in a different way. It's not just makeup and hair, it is all intertwined. I think beauty is a state. It's not what you put on yourself. Yes, there's a component of that, but a very superficial. This is like the top peel of the onion. Not even the onion, it's the little shell, the shell part of it that comes off because you can't really cook with that. That's the makeup. And so I want to talk about beauty in this way because it's all connected and it's very deep on a cellular level, DNA. And as you heard us talking today, Shari, thank you so much for sharing this stage with me, your story, and honoring you and your 7-year-old self. I just want to bring her to the podcast as well. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I think we're going to have to record another one.
Absolutely. And I want to honor you though. I love your woo woo, whatever parts that are there. I just want to say that. And I love the work that you're doing and that you're bringing beauty in different ways to the forefront and using your voice for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shari. And guys, stay tuned to hear all the other things that I will be talking about pretty soon. Thank you, Shari, again. It was an honor, and we will hopefully have you on again.
Hope so.
Guys, now we know the difference between happiness and joy. I think it couldn't have been said by anyone else better than Shari, because I truly believe that when we seek advice from people or when we think about somebody who's an expert at something, I want to know that they've been through something, right? And I always use the example of acne. If I want clear, glowing skin, I want to get that advice from someone who had like cystic acne, who had craters, who had scars, and who fixed it. And I feel like that's why I needed Shari to come on today, because she has been through so much in her life and she was able to find joy and happiness and identify how those two are different and how to cultivate that. So I hope that you learned something today, guys. And as always, as promised, you know that there is a giveaway. So if you're still listening, all you have to do is write a review on the podcast, which if you go all the way to the bottom, it says write a review. Click on that and screenshot your review. Once you submit it, DM me that on Instagram. And my handle is Elizabeth__Molina. And then you will win a copy of Shari's book. So anyways, guys, I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I always love getting your feedback. So until next time, my beautiful people, see you later.